keep calm and carry on. I'm sure you've seen that phrase before. What you probably don't know is that phrase originated as a motivational slogan by the British government at the very start of World War II. Under those circumstances, keep calm and carry on. But that's more the preface for what is really the start of my story is Jerusalem, 1975. Jerusalem is a most amazing place. Every step that you take on that land tells an amazing story. What I'm going to share with you today is the story behind just one of the footsteps that I took in pitch black. Ahead of me, pitch black. Behind me, pitch black. To my left, solid rock. And to my right, solid rock. And above me, still more solid rock, head height, and I'm standing in water. It gets worse. The roof comes down, and the water is now over my mouth. An experience. So let me take a metaphorical step back this time, and let's talk about 700 BC in the land of Israel. Biblical times, and in those days, it was a really good idea to live inside a walled city. The advantage of living inside a walled city is it actually kept you safe from any roaming lions and tigers. And more particularly, if there were invading armies, and in this case, invading Assyrians, you could keep safe behind the walls. You could stay safe, particularly because back then, they didn't have any of the good technology for knocking down walls of stone and concrete. So the invading armies used to sit outside the walls and wait. And wait for you to die of hunger or thirst or simply give up and come out. Now, of course, in those days, all the food was locally grown. It was all organic. In actual fact, it was really very much like Asheville without any of the food trucks. And you could go without food for 3 weeks, so not too bad. What you couldn't live without for more than 3 days was actually water. And it wasn't like running into the kitchen and getting the next glass of water. You needed to have access, you needed to know where your next drink was coming from. And in a walled city, that meant you either had to dig down really deep as a well into the ground, or you need to be able to get outside the city walls to an access to water outside. Water, access to water was life. And so we're talking about the city of David in the 8th century BC. The city of David is known to be the core of what is now known as Jerusalem. And in those days, there was no water inside the city walls. The nearest spring was just outside the city walls. And the town was about to be attacked by the Assyrians. And the history is told actually in the Bible. And yes, you have an Englishman talking about Bible verses at a Japanese-style event in Asheville, North Carolina. Weird, I know. Read Chronicles 2 if you want to know any more. The essence of this, though, is that King Hezekiah, the ruler at the time, had 2 teams of miners start at opposite ends, digging their way underground with pickaxes. And somehow they managed to meet, serpentining towards each other. They met in the middle to bring water in from the spring. But that original use of transporting water inside the city walls, in the 20th century, when they rediscovered this tunnel, it became somewhat of a tourist trap. Sorry, did I use the word trap? I use the term judiciously, I promise you, because inside it is dark. It is wet, and the ceiling comes down to water level fatally close if you happen to be caught in there in a flash flood. Not a good idea. Now, of course, those relatively sensible people would go through with flashlights. Here I was, aged 17, with a bunch of somewhat adventurous, dare I say, reckless teenagers, going through with candles. The candles in front of me had gone out. The candles behind me had gone out. Hence I was in pitch black, with the ceiling of solid rock pushing down further and further until, as I took the next step forward, the water was actually over my nostrils. Oh. It was at this point that I realized that there were people behind me. I couldn't turn round and go back. But in that moment, I also realized that there were people ahead of me, and there was no sign of them panicking in front of me. Take another step forward. And as I did, I very literally breathed a sigh of relief as the roof lifted up and I had room to breathe again. Which is where we get to the moral of this story. Because some days you may feel like you're going to war. There are some days when you feel like you're up to here in water. There are some days when you've just heard another White House press briefing, too many. When that day comes, trust the people that have got your back. Trust the people that are leading the way in front of you. Keep calm and take the next step. Thank you.